Hello friends, and welcome to Escaping the Mouse with your host, me, Breck Roll. Alright, today is May 11th, 2023. Today is the 70th anniversary of an F5 tornado going through the middle of downtown Waco. Now I know I've talked about this on a number of occasions before, but today, since it's the actual anniversary of the event, I decided I wanted to go downtown and talk a little bit about some of the businesses that were destroyed downtown. I've touched on that a little bit too, but we're going to go a little bit more into a deep dive on that. So let's go to downtown Waco. Now you may have noticed that this video went up at an odd time. Usually my videos go live at 8 o'clock Texas time. This one went live at 4:30, and I chose that time to commemorate the point where the tornado actually first started doing damage in the city of Waco. You see, the tornado actually was first spotted a little north of Lorena, which is about 5 miles south of Waco, but it was just spotted on the ground and hadn't really done anything. The first place it actually was on the ground and did some damage is over by the traffic circle. It's actually over by where the Bear Arms Brewery is, and I've been there a couple times. So it's kind of interesting to have looked at the track and said, oh yeah, that started over there. So actually we're going to run over there first. We're going to see where the tornado originally started, where it hit the ground at 4:30 and then kind of snaked its way downtown. Let's go. So yeah, this is the Bear Arms Brewery. I've been here a few times. I got a tour through here. We saw a couple of micro wrestling tournaments here. That's the traffic circle right over there. That's been a part of Waco history for more than 100 years. But this is about the location right here where the tornado first came into town. You got to remember, 70 years ago, this place wasn't quite as built up as it is today. This was just empty fields and farms out here. Now, the original tornado was first seen on the ground about 4:10 in the afternoon in Lorena, which is about 8 or 10 miles that way. And like I said, this is where it came into town and where there was the first actual damage caused by the tornado as it worked its way that way. Now, like I said, it hit this point about 4:30 in the afternoon, and 5 minutes later it would plow through the middle of downtown Waco and leave 114 dead bodies in its wake. All right, we are in the corner of 5th Street and Austin Avenue. This is right in the shadow of the Alico building, and there's the courthouse over there. But this is where more than half the people who died in this tornado died, in this one little block here. And a lot of it happened in the store that was right here on this corner. This was the RT Dentist building, but there were a whole bunch of other businesses along here that were also either completely destroyed or destroyed enough where they had to be basically demolished afterwards. You had the RT Dentist building. Right next to it, about here, was the Joy Theater. It was a movie theater. After that was something called Chris's Cafe, which is a very popular eatery at the time. Then there was a tailor called Hollywood Tailors. Then there was another clothing place called Harlick's Fine Clothes. There was a Lubby's Cafeteria right here. Another tailor called Perfect Tailors. And then finally a jeweler here called Town Jeweler. And it basically went the entire stretch of this block all the way up to the Roosevelt building. Now, like I said, most of the people who died in the tornado died in this little block here, because there was also a row of businesses behind the businesses here, and they were also destroyed also. And that's where that parking structure is over there right now. So since most of the deaths in the tornado happened here, and most of the deaths that happened here happened in the RT Dentist building, I'm going to focus a lot on that building, and we're going to talk about the history of this company. So this is the former location of the RT Dentist building. This is one of the biggest businesses in Waco at the time. It was a furniture supply company, made very fine furniture and rugs, but it actually started out with really humble beginnings. Its owner, Robert T. Dennis, and his brother James moved to Central Texas in about 1886 and just started looking for jobs. They were doing rail splitting and running a grocery store and dry good business and stuff like that. But Robert had this fascination with furniture, and so he rented a building here in 1882, and basically started off building coffins and offering funeral services. But ultimately, over time, he got into furniture and was making some of their own furniture, and it was some of the finest furniture in Waco. In fact, they did some kind of cutting edge things in this company that really helped make the company explode. First off, they had a very elaborate window display out in front, and they decorated up the windows to make the store attractive for people to come into. They also offered a thing where they had regional sales managers who would go around the state of Texas and Oklahoma and New Mexico and bring catalogs to hotels and businesses that were looking to build out their business and furnish their business or houses or whatever, and it would sell stuff through the mail to them. Now that means that they had to have a very large inventory of stuff. So it wasn't long before they determined that they were going to have to grow. And there was a competitor called Stratton Furniture that they bought out and merged with, basically, and that basically turned them into the powerhouse furniture maker in this part of Texas. And the original building goes basically to the driveway of this parking lot, but there was another building behind it called the Paget building. It was the Tom Paget building, and at one point Robert Dennis purchased the Paget building and turned it into a warehouse to store all this stuff that he needed, so he could provide his inventory to his customers in 3 different states. And so the Paget building was here. Now, like I said, every building basically in this area right now, with the exception of the Alico building, which is right there, and the Roosevelt Hotel, those are the only 2 buildings in this whole area, in this whole block here, that survived. And like I said, it was an afternoon thing. You got to remember, in 1953, the tornado alert system wasn't very mature. In fact, at the time, the only people that were really monitoring tornadoes was the U.S. military, and they did it basically just to make sure they could protect their planes. So there wasn't really a good way of communicating that something was going on. And as far as people knew, late in the afternoon on May 11th, it was just another day, and they just had a thunderstorm come through. But it got worse, and all of a sudden the sky turned black, and people were trying to take refuge in here. And witnesses say that the R.T. Dennis building, when it got hit by the tornado, it was basically right in the middle, the strongest part of the tornado. And you gotta remember, this was an F5 tornado. F5 tornadoes can be up to a mile across and have winds well in excess of 150 miles an hour. And so it ripped the roof off of this building, and basically that just created a pressure wave inside the building, and the outside walls just exploded. Somebody who watched it happen said it just looked like a bomb went off inside the building. And 22 people died right in that building. Basically, the building was six stories tall. It was wood frame, and it just did not hold up. In fact, the only buildings in the area that, like I said before, that did hold up were like the Roosevelt Hotel, the Alico building, which have steel frames. And both these buildings were right in the middle of the tornado, but weathered it just fine. In fact, it was interesting. I was looking at some old pictures, and I realized this building across the street was also a survivor of the tornado. I have pictures that show like the top windows right there, all blown out. But this building here is another survivor of the Great Tornado. Now, a lot of people talk about some of the things that happened in here. Like I said, a lot of people died right here in the R.T. Dennis building. And a few of the survivors tried to make their way into the basement in order to escape the damage, and ran into other problems when the water mains were burst by the debris flying around and the basement began to flood. So there were a bunch of interesting stories about how people survived this. One of the receptionists in the R.T. Dennis building basically had her her switchboard. You can remember that's a big piece of technology. It fell over and it trapped her on it, and she couldn't get out. It took them 13 hours to excavate her. Another person crawled around in the rubble and actually ended up going into the elevator shaft so that she could find a way out. Now I'm going to take a quick trip around the block just to kind of emphasize how much of an area there was covered by this disaster. Remember, the only building in this block from here to up to Franklin, which is where the light is up there, and over to 3rd Street, which is over there, the only building that survived was this Roosevelt Hotel. Actually, that was a Hilton hotel at the time. And I was reading something somewhere that the RT Dennis company furnished that hotel. And in fact, it was the last major job that the RT Dennis company did before it went out of business. Like I said, this is where the Paget warehouse was right here. And like I said, it got leveled to the ground. The RT Dennis building got leveled to the ground. Most of the buildings more north of the RT Dennis building had their roofs ripped off or the facade torn apart. And like I said, everything here was leveled. It's stunning to think about that. Because like I said, there were 5 or 6 businesses on Austin, and now we're on Franklin. There were 5 or 6 more businesses on this side, and they were also destroyed as well. It's amazing how much of this was rebuilt. You never would know any of this happened here if you hadn't researched it. They do have that memorial over a block that way, and we'll go look at that a little later. We've seen that before. But we're catching up with the Roosevelt Hotel again. That's it, kind of with the flag coming off of it at the top there. Next building over. The Bron Davis shooting. You remember when I covered that story? Yeah, this used to be the Hilton here. Now it's called the Roosevelt Tower. I think there's a bank in the bottom of it, and then it's apartments up above. So you really start to get the idea of how big of an impact this thing had. There's actually, I've seen sky aerial photos that show, you can see kind of the City Hall building down there in the background. Even that building wasn't left untouched, but you know, that was a concrete building and a steel building too, and so it actually survived, and that, you know, had the tornado go right through it too. But this is where it all happened. And I've talked about this before. The Dr. Pepper Museum actually got hit by it too. And the Dr. Pepper Museum is about a half a mile that way. So it gives you an idea how big this thing was. It's funny, you in a small town like this, you know, you get everybody knows somebody that knew somebody that died in the tornado or was affected by the tornado. You know, I hear people talking about it all the time. You know, this is 70 years ago today. I don't think we got any threat of tornadoes today. Nice sunny day, but witnesses said, like I said, when the tornado started getting close, that the sky just turned black. And there was one witness who said that when she was trapped under the rubble, the only light that there was from the flashes of lightning, and that was how she figured out how to get out of the building, is she could see the flashes of lightning and start headed for the light. I know I've shown you this before, but I always like looking at these historical markers, and this one directly relates to this. The Waco Tornado, one of the most disastrous tornadoes in Texas history, swept through downtown Waco on the afternoon of May 11th, 1953, killing 114 people, destroying 346 buildings, and creating property damage in excess of $50 million. That's $50 million in 1953. That's a lot of money. Some of the worst devastation occurred at this site, where 22 employees of the RT Dennis Building Company died when the building collapsed. Aid to the city came in the form of volunteers and military rescue forces, and donations totaling over $9 million. The rescue and restoration efforts that followed reflect Waco's strong sense of pride and community spirit. And of course, we got these cool kinetic sculptures that I've shown you a bunch of times. They're not all spinning, but that one is. And then, of course, on the corner of 4th in Austin, just basically 1 block away from where it all happened, we got this memorial here. On May 11, 1953, one of the deadliest tornadoes in United States history descended on downtown Waco and shook the soul of the community. This commemorative honors the memory of the 114 people who died in that storm and celebrates the spirit of the community that survived. Adversity is the path to truth, Lord Byron. And of course, on the back of this has got the names of all the victims. Now, despite the fact that the RT Dennis Company had several other facilities in Central Texas, the loss of this building here and the fact that 2 of the 3 main executives in the company died when the building collapsed on them, and the 3rd one passed away about a year later due to leukemia. Unfortunately, the RT Dennis Company did not survive it, and they ended up shutting their doors and liquidating all their assets. Kind of a sad ending to a very successful and very important company in the history of Waco's early history. So anyway, I think that's all that I have for today. Thank you as always for watching, and I'll see you next time on Escaping the Mouse. Good night.